What's going on, guys, and welcome back to the channel, and welcome back to day 12 of Vibesmas. As today, we have a different type of video in store. Instead of showcasing a build or a game, I wanted to take a look at all 34 killers in Dead by Daylight and talk about what I would change, whether it be a buff or nerf or something to every single killer. Now, this will apply mostly to the killer's powers and their add-ons. We won't be focusing so much on the perks, as that, I believe, would be a different video all on its own, talking about what perks could get buffed, nerfed, or completely reworked. So I think it should be a fun discussion. Hopefully you guys have some ideas of your own. Let me know what you think, and let's get to it. Starting with the Trapper. I think the easiest change to make for Trapper is a simple one, and it is to make the Trapper Sack a base kit add-on. As maps get larger and larger, there is no reason to increase how much work Trapper has to do going around the map picking up his own traps just to have a power. As we're almost into year 8 of Dead by Daylight, I think it's safe to say the poster boy of the game should have a power that's finally threatening. And for an added bonus, you could also include making the makeshift wrap add-on base kit as well, so that Trapper no longer has to deal with getting caught in his own traps, instead just having to go over and simply replace the trap, instead of wasting time getting stuck in it. Next, we look at the Wraith, who, honestly, the biggest change that I would make to the Wraith is reverting a change that they made to him previously, and I would simply give him his old Uncloak Lunge back. It just simply feels so much shorter than what it used to be, and honestly, it'd be nice for him to just have some sort of lethality again with the lunge. Also, it probably just wouldn't hurt to get him an inhaler, so he can finally fix whatever's going on with his voice and his throat. Now, I am not someone who plays a lot of Hillbilly, but if I had to make a change to the Hillbilly, it would be, quite simply, to bring back Skybilly. That's it. Just make playing Hillbilly fun again. Also, I think it is just beyond time to remove the overheat mechanic entirely and just let Billy be Billy. I think it'd be great to have him have these abilities to be fun and just be a more popular killer again. Now for the nurse, a simple change, and the nurse is the first one we're going to look at nerfing, and it involves aura reading. And I would simply make it so that when you are seeing an aura as the nurse, when you start to blink, you stop seeing that aura. Much like how Spirit can't see auras when she's phasing, I would get rid of the ability to see auras during a blink. I'll say I would also change about the nurse, that if you do manage to stun her with a pallet, that she should lose whatever charges she currently has on her blinks. And then I would make it so that her blinks just take 0.2 seconds longer to recharge, just so that way if you do manage to do something, you're able to have a chance at actually getting away from her and are rewarded for stunning her. For Myers, most of the changes for Myers come in his tier 1, which I would just make it so tier 1 is actually more viable. Give Myers tier 1 more speed and a better lunge to make him more of a actual threat while not tiered up. And then you're still in chase when in tier 1 but can't earn it, and I would make it so tier 1 Myers is able to have Bloodlust. And then some changes to tier 3. You have to earn tier 3. And I would make tier 3 simple, like the Singularity. Give Myers a form of a boosted kick rate. He already has faster vaulting and a faster lunge when in tier 3. I think giving him a faster break works as well. And finally, let Stalk reduce. That way he doesn't just run out of his power. And a fully stalked survivor will reset over time so that Myers is not just eventually stuck in tier 2, or it doesn't force Myers to have to rely on the infinite tier 3 add-on. And one last change would involve the tombstone piece, which I would make base kit. But much like Pyramid Head's execution, it only would work on someone's last hook. So you can't just take someone out of the game immediately at the start. It would be the final kill or just their last hook. Now, the Hag is one of those few killers I look at, and I believe she is in a pretty solid place all around. The one change that I could genuinely think of is to benefit survivors, and that's after triggering a trap. I don't know how many of you experienced this, because Hag is a very rare killer to see nowadays. I would make it so once a trap is triggered, you still are looking where you were initially running, and you aren't forced into a weird camera angle switch all of a sudden. Just keep your normal way you were going and not have that nauseating feeling of the camera just flipping on you without your control. Next, we come to the Doctor. And the Doctor just has one little change that I would make. And I know that Behavior is planning on adjusting the Doctor sometime next year. I'm very interested to see what those changes are. But a change that I would make to the Doctor is simply the further you go into Madness, and especially once you hit tier 3, should be some sort of slowdown. Now, it wouldn't be anything ridiculous like an 8% that Wesker has, which we'll talk about later. But there should be some sort of hinder outside of just being able to unhook, or use flashlights. There should be some sort of punishment for actually getting put into tier 3. Huntress has one glaring flaw that I would change. And if you've ever played Survivor against a Huntress, you know that that change is her hitboxes. Because sometimes you're just doing everything right, you feel like you made the perfect play, you're around the corner, and then boom, you still get smacked by the hatchet. And you're just stuck confused, wondering how that hit. I think it's time to take a good look at how her hatchets actually work, adjust the hitboxes, and make them fairer to deal with as Survivor. But there's one other aspect of the Huntress, and that is the Soldier's Putty add-on. I would just make a base kit. There's no reason to punish the Huntress for not having hatchets. She should still feel viable as a killer, so increasing her movement speed to 4-6 base kit would A, give the Huntress some lethality when she doesn't have her hatchets, and B, let survivors actually know she's out of hatchets if they can detect that the movement speed of the Huntress has increased. Now, Bubba is one of those killers I look at as being in a pretty solid all-around place, and not many changes actually needed to his base kit or anything. But if I did have to make one change to Bubba, it would be to either change one of his add-ons or give him an add-on that increases the charge speed for the chainsaw. We have add-ons that increase how fast he moves and how long it lasts with the chilies and the marks. I think there should be an add-on that increases how quickly the chainsaw actually charges. But in case that would be a little too overpowered, the drawback I would simply give that is it would take away one charge, so that you only get 2 charges most, but you get faster charges to actually use them, which I think would be a nice change for Bubba. And then, just because I think it'd be funny, Bubba should be the one killer with a base kit no ed. I'm kidding. Unless, behavior, you could. I'm just saying, if you wanted to, basically no ed Bubba. Now, unfortunately, Freddy is just so weak now. He needs so many changes. And it starts with, I think, making the dream world itself more of a threat. Which I would make it so if it's either base kit or an add-on, Freddy would have the ability to use both snares and fake pallets in a game, having a limited number of each as to not be too overpowered with them. And then with the teleportation, I think it's simple. Freddy should get a reduced cooldown base kit for each survivor in the dream world so that he can teleport faster, and more importantly, he should be able to teleport to gens that have already been completed. It would make traversing the map so much easier, especially in endgame, and I think that's what Freddy would need to take him out of like the bottom 3 tier killers and at least get him back into being a C, B tier killer. For the pig, there's 2 simple changes I would make, both involving the dash. A, I would make it so the dash charges much quicker, and B, lasts a little bit longer. I'd also make it so, much like an Oni Slam or a Blight Rush, I feel like a pig dash should break a pallet. And finally, I feel like natural bear trap attachment is a bit slow, so I would make it so the increased base kit speed for it without having to use add-ons like the crate or the bag of gears. For the clown, I would simply change the yellow bottles and make them act like the pink and reduce the cooldown to 0. Let it be so that the yellow bottles just activate immediately and not have to wait and potentially overshoot your haste. I'd also make playing against clown more accessible and remove the nausea anytime you're in a bottle. I feel like you can still feel the effects of the slowdown and the hinder without actually having your screen distorted and everything looking terrible, and just leading to players feeling nauseous when going against the clown. And then I would also make one tweak to the clown's iridescent pinky finger add-on. And that would simply be that when you hit someone with a bottle, they're no longer exposed and insta-downable. I would completely rework that add-on to make it more like Pinhead's Engineer's Fang add-on. So if you hit a survivor with a direct bottle, they become injured. If you do it again, they become deep wound. But every time you hit them, the hindered status effect does not last as long as it naturally would, and survivors are able to recover quicker when being in the pink clouds. And this would only apply to the pink. It would not apply to the yellow bottles. Now, the spirit, I think, has been in a super good place for a long time, and the one change would have been the mother-daughter ring, which they actually did change. But they never compensated for nerfing the mother-daughter ring, which I would simply just make the spirit's phase 5% faster to off-put the changes that were dealt to the mother-daughter ring nerf. For the Legion, I would change Frenzy. Starting with the fact, make it so you can see scratch marks and pools of blood when in Frenzy. And on top of that, make it so that for every survivor hit in a Frenzy, it would actually change the rate of speed for the mending, so that the more you hit, the more time they have to spend mending. With one final change coming with a stun. If you get stunned in power, you should not have your power set to 0. I know I said this for the nurse, but the nurse and the Legion are 2 totally different types of killers on 2 totally different tier lists of how good they are. So if you get stunned as Legion in your power meter should stop wherever it was at and refill from there, instead of a stun automatically setting the meter to 0 and going back up. Have it just continue and build back from wherever you were stunned at. Now, the Plague is like the reverse of the Huntress, where she has broken hitboxes, but for her. And it seems like you can puke on someone and it not register, and I would simply change that so that it feels more rewarding to play the Plague and like you aren't getting robbed of a hit you feel like you should have. And one small change would just be during the Corrupt Purge, change how loud the whispering is in your ear when you're playing Plague, because it is a bit obnoxious at times trying to track a survivor while you have that full-on whispering guiding everything you're doing. Now, Ghostface, I feel, is in a super good spot and doesn't need many changes. But if I had to pick one, it would be the reveal mechanic, and just change how it works, because there's times, and we all know it, that you are either behind something, out of sight, and somehow still managing to get revealed by a survivor. I would simply change that mechanic, tweak it a little bit so that it feels more natural getting revealed and stalking. Because for the moment, it's just very confusing what counts as being out of sight and getting revealed. Now, the Demogorgon is another one of those killers who is in a super good spot. And the only changes that I could think are A, when coming out of a portal, increase the time that you're undetectable. And B, give Demo some way to destroy his own portals without having to bring the Rotten Pumpkin add-on. Because sometimes you have a portal that's good at one point in a game, and eventually that portal just doesn't serve any purpose, and if survivors don't destroy it, you're kind of stuck with that portal just existing. So I think it'd be better for Demo to just have the ability to destroy his own portals when he needs to. That way it keeps his map traversal options open and free to use. Now, Oni is the one killer I look at as, honestly, I don't see any changes that could be made. Like, the only thing I could think of would be to completely get rid of the blood cap. So, and I don't mean for, like, time limit on his power. I mean, like, when you have orbs down on the ground, and you just have orbs sitting there, they shouldn't disappear over time. I'd just let them exist, honestly. Because at that point, it's more on the survivors for not taking the time to heal than it is on the Oni for just doing what is best for him to keep his power going. Now, when it comes to the Deathslinger, we've seen a potential change that could work already with the Trickster, who went from being a 4-4 killer to 4-6, and it worked out pretty decently. But that's not the change we're going for when it comes to the Deathslinger. Now, the change we're looking at is simply the fact that he is a base kit 32 meter terror radius killer, and I think it's time to give him back the ability to have quickscopes, whether it's base kit or through an add-on. Let him have that ability, because Deathslinger was way more fun to play when that's something he could do. Also, a slight change to his terror radius music and his chase music, because before I see the killer and I just hear the music, it sounds so much like Pyramid Head, and I don't know who I'm playing against, and I'd like to have a clear distinction to know who I'm starting the match against. Speaking of Pyramid Head, I mean, the biggest change that could come to him is a full, complete rework and overhaul of his add-ons. Because outside of the 2 range add-ons, everything he has is essentially useless. I think it's also time to implement the feature that Behavior teased and then got rid of a few PTBs ago, and that is the ability that if you hit a survivor with the M2, they have the Trails of Torment afflicted to them and can be caged. I think that was a fun idea. It would have been nice to have seen it actually play out. I think it's time to let that ability come into the game and see if it's as broken or as everyone thought, because I think it would just be fun. Now, thankfully, Behavior already announced that they are going to be changing the Blight's add-ons, which was a huge part of this. But, much like I said for the Nurse, I think it's time for that. If Blight is in a rush, that his ability to see auras should be cut off. He already has some of the best map traversal in the game, and letting him know exactly where to go is already too much. I would also implement some feature, much like how there's a sound now when Nurse has her blinks back, or Spirit is ready to phase. I would put a sound cue to let survivors know when the Blight has all of his rushes back available to him. Now, the twins need so much work, and one of the biggest things that I could think of for the twins is a change in the speed with how quickly you're able to alternate between Charlotte and Victor. Especially going from Victor back to Charlotte, I think that speed needs changed. Also, if Victor is attached to a survivor, Charlotte is essentially trapped as just a base M1 killer, and I would give her a slight haste bonus anytime Victor is on a survivor. Now, this doesn't apply to Victor being left on the ground willingly by the player, but if they're on a survivor, give them a little bit of haste. And then one of the worst things about playing twins, which will hopefully get fixed when the twins rework happens, is sometimes when Victor gets trapped on top of a pallet and it's just an insta kill on Victor. I think it's time to remove that little bug and just let Victor exist as he is. Especially considering he's probably going to get kicked anyway. Now, thankfully, the Trickster did recently get a rework, and behavior addressed one of my biggest concerns that I'd wanted with the Trickster for a long time, and that was making him a 4/6 killer. But even with these changes, there's still a few things that the Trickster needs fixed. And that starts with the main event, and how badly main event genuinely needs tweaked. Whether it needs a massive change and a massive increase to the rate of fire, and it needs to be taken off of its timer. There's no reason that having your power should be on a timer to dictate how long you can use it. I think once you earn main event, you should be able to hold it until you are ready to use it, and not have to worry about it running out of time on its little 30-second timer. And then main event aside, I would just change the Trickster's throw rate in general, because it just feels so slow and clunky now that it's almost not even worth playing him. Even though they made all these good changes, they went back and made him feel so much worse. Now, Nemesis, I would give the most drastic change of all, because with his Dead by Daylight adaptation, he is missing a key element that makes him feel like Nemesis. It's time to give Nemesis his RPG, or at least his flamethrower, because those are canon in the DBD universe now, thanks to the Xenomorph. What? Is that asking for too much? Alright, then we'll do something simple, and we'll look at the zombies, who should either see A, an increase to their base speed, or B, some AI brain increase to make them smarter and stop getting stuck in corners of the map, and so they actually know the right areas to go. Nemesis himself feels perfectly fine, but the zombies need so much work. And then the one other change comes to Survivor's infection. And when you go from healthy to infected, I would cut down the distance you gain, because you are still a healthy survivor in the end, and there's no reason that you should gain as much distance from a healthy action as if you were going from being a healthy survivor to an injured survivor. Now, when it comes to Pinhead, behavior did change the one issue that I had, and that was when trying to solve the box, how constantly harassed by chains you would be. They took care of that issue, and I genuinely find Pinhead to be in a perfect place since then. So if I had to make one change to Pinhead, it would simply be give him more voice lines. And then one final change would be a simple one. And that is, once you recover the box, whether off a survivor or you find it yourself, on top of the screams and showing where people are, I would give a small 3-second aura reveal whenever you find the box to make it so you know where to go find your next survivor. The artist is a pretty simple change, and that involves the cooldown on the birds. And I would make it so it's just a shorter cooldown if you use all your birds. Because too frequently there are times you will get birds on a survivor and get nothing out of it. I think with a shorter cooldown, you have better chance of actually using your birds long distance to create pressure, instead of hoping for RNG that survivors either A, just don't manage to get them off, or B, don't have a locker nearby that they can just jump into to remove the birds. I think the shorter cooldown will give more chance to actually get value from long distance birds. Also, because of the way she was depicted and that it never came to fruition, I would simply make Spies from the Shadows base kit on the artist. That way you always get value from the crows on the map, instead of just having to also rely on your power. Sadako is a killer they said that they were going to be taking a look at and changing, so I don't know what the behavior has planned, but one simple change I would make, it's the TVs, because the Force Condemned meta is still very strong and very much prevalent in the game. So I would honestly change the TV teleport time from 15 seconds to 20 or 25. Everything else about Sadako and how she works, from the tapes to Condemned to everything else, works fine. But a Force Condemned on just spamming TVs is still very easy and very prevalent, and I think that was the one thing that would probably be best to be tweaked about Sadako. For the Dredge, it's time to make Hattie's calendar a base kit part of the Dredge's kit. On maps that just have so many lockers, honestly, you spend so much time wasted trying to force your way out of a locker to get a good teleport, which is brutal to deal with. By making Hattie's calendar base kit, you spend one less second dealing with this, and I think it'd be a nice quality of life change for the Dredge. Also, I think it's time to, as we even look around on maps here like the Swamp, increase the number of lockers available on maps. Because so many times you load into a map with Dredge and you have nothing you can do. So I think by making more lockers available, makes it easier for Dredge to have a chance to actually be viable on the majority of maps. We look next at Wesker. And honestly, it's beyond time to address, much like Huntress, Wesker has some pretty weird hitboxes, and it's time to look at those and time to get those fixed. Also, when a survivor is fully infected, yes, a hinder makes sense, but 8% is a bit crazy. So I think it's time to tone that down from 8% down to just a 5% hindered. I think would be plenty. Also, the best change that they could genuinely make to Wesker is to simply make It's Weskin Time an official voice line in the game. For the Knight, I think the most simple change you can make comes to his guards. And that is, it's time to make Map of the Realm a base kit add-on and increase the guard's detection range. And then Map of the Realm itself could still increase the range even further, but I would boost the rarity from a brown add-on up to a purple or a green. Also, when damaging a generator, each guard does the exact same, so I would nerf the assassin to only do the standard 2.5% that a regular killer would get from kicking a gen. But to off-put that, when the current effects damages a gen, I would increase from 5 up to 7.5. Now, thankfully, the Skull Merchant was changed, and she can no longer take part in the 3-gen meta, which means the only change left to make to the Skull Merchant is quite simply to remove her from the game. What, is that not an option? Okay, fine. Honestly, when it comes to the Skull Merchant and the drones, I think the stealth aspect is good, and I think having haste when chasing a survivor who is being tracked is also a nice touch. So the change I would make is to survivor quality of life against the Skull Merchant, and it is to either decrease the length that you are hindered, or to make the change that any survivor put into the deep wound, you cannot be hindered while a deep wound, but you can have hindered when injured. I did not mean for that to rhyme, but it worked out. Now, the Singularity, they've tried to address, and I still don't think he's panned out. So the biggest change that you can make to the Singularity is not even to survivors who have been slipstreamed, but to the cameras. And I would make it so that a camera that is turned off by an EMP reactivates a bit faster than what it's already set to. Also, I feel like EMPs are still very easily accessible, and that there should take some note from how turrets work with Singularity, that they don't just respawn right away, and that there is a full timer that has to be gone through, because the flame turrets don't all just magically hit right away, and will still need a cooldown, especially if all of them are in place or have been recently destroyed. So I think making some small tweak like that would be a huge benefit to Singularity's quality of life. Also, do what it was supposed to do, and we have to reprogram the Singularity, because it wasn't supposed to harm the crew. Now, Xeno is another one of those killers that's in a pretty solid spot, with another one of the changes to Xeno being one that would be to a survivor's benefit, and that is some sort of indication of when a tail attack is about to hit, because otherwise it's just a guessing game and dodging, trying to have predictions for when Xeno's about to strike. So I would simply just give some sort of sound, something that lets survivors know, hey, he's about to do this. And finally, we have the newest killer to the game, Chucky, who, with changes to Chucky, involve one that is a benefit to survivor and one being benefit to killer. With the survivor benefit being the scamper time is still ridiculous. And I would simply change the scamper so that it gives survivors more time to react and get out of the way so they aren't forced to take a hit from Chucky immediately diving under a pallet. And then for killer, I would make it so that Heidi Ho and the stealth either A, last longer base kit without the add-on, or B, let the ability charge faster. Because as someone who really enjoys stealth builds, having better stealth on Chucky would just make him even more fun to play as than he kind of already is. But with limited stealth, it only gives you so much that you can do, so it'd be nice to have that change to make him the first better stealth killer in the game since probably Sadako's release. But these are just a few of the changes that I've thought of and would like to see come to Dead by Daylight to these killers. What do you guys think, and do you have any of your own? I appreciate you guys for being here, thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you guys in the next one.